and then we will get started. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started just to be mindful of everyone's time. My name's Amy Gibson. I am the Youth Planning Manager at CHIP, and we would definitely like to welcome you today to our 2020 celebration series. This is the third session focused on breaking the cycle, ending youth and young adult homelessness. So for CHIP celebration this year, we had to really reimagine how to engage the community and landed on a series of lunch and learns that have taken place over the last few months and touch on several key topics of homelessness. Our concluding event will be on the evening of December 9th at 5 p.m. And we would like to invite you to that evening, as we will be celebrating community partners, advocates, and other providers in the community. While this is a free series of events, if you feel compelled to donate, please check us out on our website, chipindy.org. And for anyone who's already donated, we thank you. We'd also like to thank a few of our sponsors. Our series sponsor, Barnes & Thornburg, and the supporting sponsor, Federal Home Loan Bank of Indianapolis. I'd also like to take this time to thank our panelists who will be introduced later and that you'll also hear from. As a few housekeeping reminders for today's panel, please remain on mute. And I believe everyone was muted as you entered into this Zoom. Utilize the chat box for any comments or questions that you have. We'll be monitoring that throughout, and we'll get to as many questions as we can at the end of the panel. And also, just so everyone's aware, the panel is being recorded today, and it'll be available on the CHIP website afterwards. And again, that's chipindy.org. So today's topic opens up a conversation on youth and young adult homelessness within our community and what's needed to effectively end homelessness for this population. It's important to note when we talk about ending homelessness among this population, where we understand as a community that young people will still experience homelessness, but as a community, we will have enough resources available to ensure homelessness is rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. While today's discussion will only begin to the dialogue, it will provide an overview into the unique needs of youth and young adults experiencing homelessness and the actions required to end homelessness for young people by 2023. To set the stage, I'll provide some facts and then turn it over to the panel. So data informs us between October 1st, 2018 and September 30th, 2019, 920 youth, which we're talking about minors and young adults age 18 to 24, experienced literal homelessness, meaning they were unsheltered or sheltered at that time. Of the 920, 90 were unaccompanied minors, or minors who were not attached to a parent, guardian, or other adult. 740 were individual young adults age 18 to 24, and 90 were young adults who were actively parenting. So they had the child or children in their custody. During the same time period, 147 young people were at risk of losing their primary nighttime residence within 14 days. This data informed the creation of a coordinated community plan to prevent and end youth and young adult homelessness. Through almost a year of planning and developing the coordinated community plan, it became evident different subpopulations of young people had unique needs. This information was gathered through focus groups and one-on-one conversations directly with young people with lived experience and expertise. And you all will hear more about those needs and barriers and solutions from our panel in just a few minutes. And speaking of the panel, there's not any way I can begin to do justice simply in an introduction for the amazing work these individuals are doing. They all have incredible biographies that speak to their dedication and passion to the youth and young adults within our community. I am honored to introduce today's panelists. First is Jenny White, who is the founding executive director of Trinity Haven, Indy, which is Indiana's first residential facility focused on the needs of LGBTQ youth and young adults who are at risk for homelessness. We also have Crystal Hazlitt, who is the Washington Township McKinney-Vento Liaison and Coordinator for Washington Township Student Programs Department. Hope Hampton also joins us, Executive Director of Project Home Indy, which is a residential facility for girls aged 15 to 19 who are pregnant or parenting. And Saeed Shah, he's a member of the Indianapolis Youth Action Board, or the YAB, and a young person with lived expertise. So again, welcome everyone, and we will get started with the moderated discussion. So the first question is, young people experiencing homelessness face unique barriers that can differ from older individuals. From your perspective, what are some systematic barriers that you see affecting young people in our community who are experiencing homelessness? And we'll start with you, Crystal.
Thanks, Amy. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for just including me in this discussion. I would say there's so many barriers that exist for young people experiencing homelessness, but from a systemic perspective, I think the most significant is related to young people who are seeking to continue their education, be that in high school or in higher education. If experiencing homelessness during high school, things like adhering to the rules and laws around being a minor and either getting enrolled in school or maintaining enrollment in a school without having a parent or legal guardian to provide required documents for residency verification, providing birth certificates, immunization records, or even accessing their previous transcript and grades, which is how we determine how many credits students need in order to graduate. That is the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act certainly does provide protection for young people in these situations and explicitly calls out the schools to for like getting in the way of basically students enrolling when they don't have these requirements or these that paperwork. So McKinney-Vento is certainly in place for that. However, it really does depend on how well that school knows the law, how well that McKinney-Vento liaison is able to adhere to the law. So I would say that those are really the significant barriers from a systemic perspective when it comes to students experiencing homelessness. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to it.
I'd say, who else would like to add to that?
For us, over at Project Home Indy, since and I too am really grateful that we have the opportunity to talk and share with others who are interested in this topic, what we are seeing from our lenses in this work. And from our lens, working with pregnant and parenting girls and following them when they leave us at 19 and working with them as they move into community, we're noticing at 18 and 19, they're being asked for, much like what Crystal suggested, a lot of records and information that it's really hard for a young person at that place and who's experienced trauma and who has been homeless to gather. It's hard for some of us to gather records sometimes. So can you imagine if you're 18 or 19, you need these records. You find an apartment, but they want you to have a co-signer. Often you're in this situation and system because you didn't have the proper support or the proper parenting situation, which is normally where our co-signers come from. Parents are older adults. And often our youth don't have that. They don't know their rights. Even when we talk to places like Habitat for Humanity for a 20-year-old woman, 24, 23, who's got 2 kids or something, 2 years of steady employment are required, which is another difficulty if you've been experiencing trauma and have been homeless. So all of those things. And then one of our biggest struggles is how to coordinate our services and what we've been doing for 9 years in community with pregnant and parenting girls. And how do we take, knowing that we're connected to a large funder in DCS, but there's homeless funds, and we have work that we could be doing with the young people who we serve who need us, but we can't coordinate those services because those two things don't match. And so for us, that's a big barrier, because when you have trusted people in the community who do good work, you want to help them continue the good work. And we're trying to figure out how to bridge that gap.
Thank you. Jenny or Saeed, do you have anything to add?
Sure. Thanks so much. I appreciate this forum, and I'm so grateful to be able to participate today. You know, Trinity Haven's focus is on providing safe, affirming housing for LGBTQ youth and young adults. And we know that systemically, some of those welcoming and affirming service providers are few and far between. There is a lot of stigma around just being LGBTQ, identifying. That's lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, non-binary, all of the parts and pieces that make us unique individuals. But finding organizations in every system that exists, from education to healthcare to housing to I was call out the BMV, right? It makes it very challenging to get the documentation that you need in order to move forward, as Hope was mentioning, like those documents and things like that. If you're a young person who is looking at or going through a transition as a transgender person, like being able to change your name or your gender marker and those sorts of things, the barriers exist and are often require multiple trips to multiple service providers in order to get those things, the accurate documentation, in order to move forward with something which should be a simple step. And so we know that, breaking down the stigmas is important, but also training and educating all of us as service providers to understand what those unique barriers are specifically for the LGBTQ population.
Thank you. Saeed, did you have anything to add?
Yes.
About
Thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for allowing me to speak. I didn't go through the traditional path of schooling after high school, but for me, some of the challenges were, negated because I just got simply lucky. I was able to find a job that paid me well and, fed me and stuff like that. But I can't speak for my girlfriend, Nikki Dodd. She's also on the YAB, and she's going through her schooling right now at IUPUI, and she faces many challenges that a normal student wouldn't face. And for example, one would be like 2 weeks ago, on her semesterly payment bill thing, she had a charge on there that shouldn't be there. So she had to spend about 3 hours every day trying to reach the person to, take off the charge. And I feel like a normal student who has their parents behind them wouldn't necessarily have to do that. They would just have to, either they would notice it because money isn't that big of an issue, or they would just have their parent do it. And that took away from 3 hours from her time to study and do other things. And she's also going into a very she's a pre-med, so she's also her schooling is very heavy, so she doesn't have a lot of time to just take out 3 hours every day and try to find the right people to talk to take that $30 charge off that could afford her groceries for the next week.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Saeed, and that experience that just directly affected Nikki, but then also that you witnessed as well. Thank you. Our next question would be, when you think of how to prioritize the immediate needs, so we're moving away from the systematic barriers into the immediate needs of young people, particularly young people of color, LGBTQ, or the other subpopulations as called out in the coordinated community plan, so minors, pregnant parenting, where do you believe the opportunity lies within our community? Jenny, do you want to start us off? Oh, you're on mute.
Of course I am. Can we keep track, like who gets the right number of mute button reminders? Okay, I'm winning. Okay. I know that, through the partnership that we have with CHIP and the City of Indianapolis and the youth, I'm going to say it wrong, YHDP, Homelessness Demonstration Project, and the funding that's made available through the federal government down through the City of Indianapolis to us as organizations in this fight against youth homelessness. We have the opportunity to create some interventions that are specific to these populations. And, Trinity Haven has been granted a piece of that funding to create the very first host homes project here in Indianapolis, which is based on the national model created by Point Source Youth. And we're very excited about this opportunity to bring host homes to Indianapolis. And it's unique for several reasons, right? It's a new housing model for youth and young adults here, but it focuses specifically on LGBTQ youth and young adults. And we know that it will also allow for a high level of youth and young adult direction and choice, because it will be up to those young people to decide who they want to match with as a potential host. So our organization will recruit hosts, individuals and families in the community that are interested in opening their homes to young people. But then the youth will be really driving that decision, along with the assistance of a case manager, and working together to match with a host. And then together, the host and the young person, along with their case manager and the coordinator of the program, will create sort of the rules of the house, if you will, and how that host and that youth will work together. And it will be our responsibility to make sure that those hosts are trained and vetted so that they are safe, welcoming, and affirming spaces for LGBTQ youth. And our case management team will be ready to serve in that capacity for the specific needs that the LGBTQ community have. And so this opportunity would not have come to fruition without the support of the YHDP and CHIP and the city of Indianapolis kind of making that happen. And so we're so grateful for that, for this intervention to actually come to fruition. So that's one opportunity that we know, or that we have before us, so that we can create those spaces that are safe, welcoming, and affirming.
Can I piggyback on that, Amy?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Just going to say the other opportunity that I think is there really, and that YHDP really, I feel like, taught us, is thinking about our systems approach, or our systems response, for young people experiencing homelessness in our community. So, I think there's just such a great opportunity for us to get out of our silos, right? Like, so those of us that are in K-12, getting out of our comfort zone and our silo, working in K-12, and understanding the services that are out there, like Trinity Haven, understanding the higher education opportunities for students and what that system looks like, and not just a one-time kind of meet and greet, but I think a continued commitment to the collaboration, to understanding how those different systems work that our young people show up at, so that we are really able to really connect young people with the services that they identify. I love the way you said that, Jenny, that they identify that they need. So I think when we do it gave us we have this opportunity right now to really learn that across our city and really develop cross systems collaboration, so that our young people we're meeting the needs that they identify for themselves.
I want to just add and piggyback on some of the things that both Jenny and Crystal have highlighted, and share that from the perspective of a provider serving 15 to 19-year-old pregnant and parenting girls, that one of our biggest struggles is their weight. They when they leave us, and if they don't decide to continue in a collaborative care situation or whatever situation might offer them some support as they move on in their adulthood, and they look for apartments. Many of our youth, right before COVID and during COVID, as if it's over, but during the beginning, when we were shutting things down and looking at security in the house and making sure everybody was safe and all of those things, we were making sure everybody here was safe and staff was safe, only to find out that some of our alumni were couch surfing at the beginning of this pandemic with 2 babies and didn't have, secure places to stay or security around meals, et cetera. And so when you know that person was here just some months before, and the work that we did, and now that they're 19 or 20 or 21, they're still homeless, but they're on a waiting list that they've been on for a year for public housing, but they're homeless. And a year is a long time. And so these are the types of things that we're finding. And we're finding that, if I get in Section 8, now I'm stuck here because Section 8 now becomes, I have to keep my income here to live here, but I've been homeless. So I do need to stay here, but now I don't want this to be all that me and my kids decide we can do. That is the cycle of what we're dealing with. And I'm just thrilled to be here because I've been here a little over a year. It seems like you guys started really hanging out robustly in 2018. And I'm happy that PHI just now gets to be a part of this conversation so that the folks who do care about this in our community and who can make a difference, who can maybe talk about what it looks like to do rapid rehousing or what it looks like for our girls to find host homes like Jenny has for her youth. So that maybe there is a family who is like, we would love to support you as you get on your feet and strengthen yourself and learn how to access resources for you and your child and mitigate this homelessness in your life after trauma. But just for me, the opportunity is having these conversations, opening up these doors, sharing what PHI is doing, being able to understand what other folks are doing and where there is an opportunity for us to collaborate. So.
Absolutely. I'd love to expand a little bit too on what the YHDP funding opportunity has brought to Indianapolis and for our continuum of care. For a long time, so much of what has been focused on in our city has been adults and families. There hasn't been a real concerted effort for ending youth homelessness or intervening on youth homelessness. And so through this youth homelessness demonstration project, not only will Trinity Haven be bringing online this host homes program, but several other organizations received funding as well to prioritize youth homelessness, youth experiencing homelessness. And there are several other interventions that are new to the pot of what's available here in our continuum of care. And since I'm not sure, there's 60 or so people online and who may have kind of a working knowledge of what that means, right? The host homes program is a very short-term intervention. It's meant to be for a few months. It might be longer. It's very individualized per person, but then it's to get someone into a safe space so that then they can work with a case manager to move on into housing that they can sustain and support. One of those options might be with another one of the continuum of care partners. The Damien Center has a program that was funded by YHDP that is focusing on youth and young adults, pregnant and parenting, LGBTQ folks, to offer short-term rent assistance so that folks aren't completely put into housing that they can't sustain after a month or two.
Right.
And the support services that wrap around that. HIP is partnering with the folks at IYG, the Indiana Youth Group, and has put together a short-term rent assistance program as well. That falls under what's called rapid rehousing in the federal, language lexicon. But it is a short-term rent assistance program to help folks have that ability to get on their feet with the support of an organization behind them, not just financially, but with support services as well. And so, those are just a couple of the other housing opportunities that are brand new for Indianapolis that focus very specifically on this youth and young adult population that have not existed until now. And so we're very excited to bring all of those things online, and that opportunity would not have been possible if it weren't for the YHDP, granting the city of Indianapolis that large sum of money. And so I just want to highlight that as well for the folks in our participants list. There's so much good work happening here that we don't have enough time to talk about all of the different parts and pieces, but there are lots of opportunities for our young people to really engage with programs that are really working overtime to make sure that youth homelessness is what Amy said. There's a really great phrase.
Rare, brief, and non-reoccurring.
Rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. Thank you.
Yes, and thanks, Jenny, for touching on those resources that are coming into the community, and so everyone else knows that is on this call. Outside of the rapid rehousing programs that Jenny mentioned in the host homes, there's also money was awarded for diversion strategies directly for youth and young adults. There's some system navigation coming into the community, and then a joint transitional housing to rapid rehousing program as well. So lots of resources and exciting things happening.
The other opportunity, just really quickly, that I want to just kind of shout out, and I think that we'll hear more about this kind of in the next question, but the opportunity that presented itself for us to hear directly from our youth experiencing homelessness. I feel like prior to this point, we were trying to do a lot of great work, but I don't know that we were hearing directly from our youth experiencing homelessness. What do we need to be doing to, Amy, make that short, that phrase? Sorry, because I just said it and I can't.
Rare, brief, and non-reoccurring.
Non-reoccurring, yeah. So I feel like that's a huge opportunity that presented itself to us, and one that we get to just continue to grow in and continue to hear from our young people, so that we can ensure that that's, you know, that we're able to say that in our city with regards to youth homelessness. So just wanted to share that as well.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll go ahead and move on just for time's sake. But this is a great conversation and dialogue, so thank you all. What feels important to prioritize as a community around youth and young adults homelessness, especially living through this difficult time with the pandemic, the call to social justice, the racial disparities that in our community? What just feels important to prioritize? And Hope, would you like to start?
Well, for us, I think this kind of, again, I know what we keep harping on the panel and that you brought us together, but it does matter. It's the community. I think if I were to be honest and share just a little bit about the support, just before we got on, I was saying we need our own support network. Even though we're here and we are supportive in many ways, I think there's a space for this being a really difficult time in the world's history. And it's a difficult, it's, you know, when I talked to my staff about this particular question, we were talking about the fact that often when you are poor or homeless, everything that is hard for everyone is just 3 times harder for you. So it's no different. We don't think that the priorities for our folk are really any different. A pandemic just exacerbates everything and makes everything worse and more difficult, and fewer people want to let you into the house, and the stakes are higher if they let you sleep on the couch now when you're bringing your baby. So what do you want from me to stay in this house? That's what we're dealing with. And during this time, that is what makes it maybe harder, if anything, but homelessness and hunger and being poor and in poverty are hard every single day. And I guess what we don't want to we want to not overstate the fact that, you know, they often say, you know, when one community gets a cold, another community gets the flu. When things are hard, this is a hard community and they're dealing with hard things at one of the worst times. And so the relationships that we build and the work that we do together to maybe bridge the gap, or when somebody else is short and can't fulfill a need here for one of these young people, maybe someone else can, this matters.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone else want to chime in?
I'll chime in. I think especially now, I think there needs to be an emphasis on just making resources and housing more inclusive rather than exclusive. Mm-hmm. And you know, bending some of those rules and stuff, because you know, youth, young adults, and any homeless person, their situation isn't, you know, it's out of ordinary. So it's not going to follow some of these rules put on them requiring and, you know, reaching for resources and inquiring resources.
Thank you for that, Saeed. Anyone else?
I think I just would like to echo back and elevate what Hope already said so perfectly, but it bears repeating. You know, each one of our special populations are experiencing their own barriers and challenges. All unaccompanied youth are at a disadvantage because they don't have the um, I would say years of experience that some older folks have, but even with that, the barriers exist. The pandemic just exacerbates it. And it also is, increasing the need for housing and available resources, as Saeed mentioned, with low barrier, with being more inclusive and available. However, I think, as we've discussed, more people are experiencing job loss. More people are experiencing, not being able to function in their highest capacity because of the strain that we're all feeling from the pandemic and how it affects all different parts and pieces of us as a community, as a world, right? And not understanding how or when there really is an end in sight. But each of us, I think, can speak to the particulars, of our, again, our special populations, but realizing that we are all in this together. And it is just as she as Hope mentioned, it's hard. It's I would dare say it's not just 3 times harder for young people or folks experiencing homelessness already. It's exponentially harder. It's like you said, it's hard for us sometimes to get our documents together, or I've got to be on hold with, whoever for over an hour. And it's like, what? That just was an hour of my day. But even as Saeed mentioned, with Nikki spending 3 hours trying to get in touch with the right person, right? I felt that in my gut. It's like, it's exhausting, and it takes its toll on the rest of our day, the rest of our week. And so when those barriers just keep coming, it makes it very difficult to want to keep trying, right? And so we as service providers have to remember to keep our barriers low, to keep those the hoops that folks have to jump through enormous, so it's really easy to get through, as opposed to here's the thing and you got to get through this tiny hole on this right special day on this right special hour, or else too bad, right? Like that just it makes it even more exhausting. So I know I went around and around on that, but I can't say it enough, right? We've got to do better as a system, and
Yeah.
that back to what those systemic barriers are. They just have been baked in to how this functions, and we want to make it better.
Jenny, I'm so glad you said that, because it's, making the barriers lower, the hoop bigger, whatever, but knowing that many of us as providers have people to answer to. So now we can't make the hoop bigger. I can't tell you how many calls we've had recently for services that we can't provide from girls who, I'm homeless, but they're not in the system that will allow us to serve them in the right way. So how can we lower, and so this is I guess these are the forums for us to work through our own systematic issues so we can change some of this stuff.
Thank you. Crystal, did you have anything to add?
Really don't. I feel
All
like
right.
that was so well said by everybody. Thank you, though.
All right. And then our last question before we open it up to everyone else for questions. When we were developing these questions for this panel today, the Youth Action Board, or the YAB, was involved and helped create the questions. So the one thing that they really wanted to ensure was that some of the myths around youth and young adults who are experiencing homelessness were addressed. So what is one thing you want the community to know about youth and young adults experiencing homelessness that is often misrepresented? And we'll start with Saeed.
I think something misrepresented is the quality of the person in general. It's many times it's not our fault that we're in that situation, and yeah, you might see us with a kid that we're not supposed to have, or with an addiction we're not supposed to have at a certain age. But the thing is that we're still very young, and it's not we're not at a stagnant place in life. And if you were to just help a little bit, I'm sure many issues can be dealt with and changed. or improved upon. And it's for youth. I think it's a very lonely path to escape whatever abuse you might be facing, whether that's from home or wherever, and to get on this path to being independent. It's a very lonely path. So I think the more compassion and more empathy the homeless community can get, it would change many people's lives.
Amy, you're on mute.
Whoops. I said yes. I think we're all just taking that in, Saeed. And thank you so much for sharing that. Who else would like to add something that you want the community to know?
I just really have to sort of continue at what Syed said in terms of that being just a lonely path, honestly. And I think the one thing that I would want people to kind of be cognizant of and aware is, I feel like young people are often just misrepresented in this experience, like when they don't show up for classes or they don't show up for the job that day, as if they don't care. And I think it's just really important for adult partners to, like I had said, be compassionate, take the time to actually listen. Because there's just so many layers, obviously, that young person is dealing with that sometimes prevent them from getting to school that day or getting to the job that day. And I think, what I hear from some adults around that judgment, as if those young people, don't care about their education or don't care about the job. I think that is sort of what stings often the most, because it couldn't be further from the truth. And this young man, Syed, is one of the most brave that I've had the pleasure to walk alongside and work with in high school. And so it's so far from the truth that they don't care. The opposite is they're so incredibly brave and are working so incredibly hard to achieve whatever it is that they're trying to get to. So I feel like that's just one of the kind of one of those things that's just completely misrepresented. And
Crystal, thank you for that. And Syed, I want to say thank you for sharing the piece about quality of person. The loneliness clearly is so real, but the idea that people judge homeless youth and now you think that this person has no value or no quality, or there's something wrong with them because they're in this position, is very difficult. For us with pregnant and parenting girls, we want to make sure that people are aware that our girls are not lazy. They work hard. They work 2 and 3 jobs to care for their children. To put in context everything that has been said here already by the folks before me about this particular topic about myths, they are going without for their babies. So the other thing is to say that they are not bad parents just because they're teen parents. They want to be good parents. And they are subjecting themselves to, they are homeless and trying their best to make sure that they don't end up with a case on their own children because they're not in a position to care for them properly. But they are good parents who love their kids and subject themselves to all sorts of systematized things so they can prove that they are good parents to everyone who needs to know that. So those things are very important to us to share, that these are hardworking, not lazy girls who care a great deal about their children and work really hard to be great parents. In parenting classes, they are willing and open and amenable to learning how to be better people so that they can be parents that don't perpetuate poverty and abuse in their children's lives.
Thank you for that, Hope. I hear that. And Crystal and Syed, I want to just give space to what you've said and elevate that. And I personally, but we all at Trinity Haven believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every human. And it's part of, my goal and our goal as an organization to foster acceptance and community, particularly for the LGBTQ youth and young adults who are experiencing homelessness and instability. 80% of LGBTQ youth who are experiencing homelessness have been rejected by their own families just for who they are in their sexual orientation or gender identity or expression. And so that feeling of rejection from the place that you think or are taught that you should be the most safe is the place that has hurt them the most. And so our purpose, our goal, right, is to foster acceptance and affirmation, so that again, that inherent worth and dignity of them as humans can shine through. And I think that applies across the board to all of us. But we're all here in part to represent each of our, like, the special populations that have been called out. And so I just want the community to know that, and understanding that that simple act of rejection can change the trajectory of someone's life forever. And so if we can be more open and understanding and accepting of each other as human beings, that will go an incredibly far way with just the human interactions that we have with each other in our programs, but as we move through life, right, in the grocery store, in Zoom meetings, like in the time of the pandemic, right? Stay home, everybody stay safe. But when you have to interact with people, even with a mask on, let's remember to treat each other with dignity and respect across the board, because we're all going through something that we have no idea what's happening on the other side of that face mask. And so let's hold on to that and hold on to our own humanity as we struggle to get through this, not only this pandemic, but in working with folks experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity, that everyone deserves that dignity and that respect. So that's my platform I'm standing on today.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you all. Right now, we're just going to go ahead and open it up for questions. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat, or take yourself off mute.
There's lots of great kudos in chat, so hopefully the panelists are seeing that. But for those participating today, this is a phenomenal time to, again, draw on the expertise of this panel today. So please ask questions. Or if you're an organization working with young adults, this is a great time to also open it up and figure out how you can come to the table and collaborate and continue to support this collective work.
Let me put a shout out or plug in there for the providers, though, on this call, and all of those that come alongside our youth and young adults and families experiencing homelessness. From a K-12 perspective, during this pandemic, our communities responded like right away in terms of what can we do to help those experiencing poverty or homelessness. And we just weren't set up school district wise to just receive, I guess I shouldn't say, obviously, like, the school wants money, but like that wasn't the easiest thing to accept in March when our business offices were closed down. And so, we just immediately started telling our community, like, go on and make donations to these organizations that are providing the services, right? Like, call those providers and see what you can do to be helpful. So just know that that's a message that we're giving to our community, and how much as a school district, we just really appreciate the nonprofits and the organizations that are boots on the ground and providing services to our children and families and wrapping around them in a way that we just don't have the capacity to do. So just while it was like silent and people were thinking for their questions, I just wanted to put that out there.
All right, it looks like there's a question. In the midst of COVID and in light of landlord favoring local laws and rules, what concerns and solutions do Chip and our panelists see on the horizon regarding a potential exponential increase in evictions leading to homelessness?
I have lots of concerns. I don't know that I have any solutions, which is the frustrating part, right? I've been working in homeless intervention and prevention for the last 12 years of my career, and it just keeps getting worse, and it feels like we're on this uphill battle all of the time. And so to call back from earlier in the conversation, like the pandemic just makes it worse, and it increases the need for so many who may be experiencing the situation, right, of the pandemic and the loss of housing because of a loss of a job that before March was fine. Everything was fine, or it felt fine, felt manageable, right? And so, that is affecting all of us on every level. And it's, the answer is really this, intervening on bigger systems than just the homeless service prevention, providers, but really leaning on our I would say probably the government officials on what can be done about the impending even more evictions that are about to happen, I'm sure, and how to have a stay on that to help people get through this together. And I can't speak to how to do that. I'm not a lobbyist, or I don't understand how a lot of those things work because we're so deep in the work of what we're doing day to day. But there are a lot of smart people out there that are really good at that, and I don't know who to pass that baton to. But I want us all to be just cognizant of the fact that the need for all of our services is increasing, and we as service providers are already pulling our hair out trying to serve as many as we possibly can, and it's exhausting. And to Hope's point earlier, like, we need that support personally, professionally. Our organizations need support. But that question is real specific, and so I'm not sure where the bigger solutions lie. Oh, there's Chelsea. I love that she popped on because I think she might have some information for us.
Can I add another concern to it while you answer? And mine is also with yours, Jenny, just the housing issues, the burden on all of us, and even the folks who support us are feeling a stronger burden. We get the emails that say we're struggling. We're like, oh no, you're struggling, but you support me. And so there's that. But then there's also, my concern is a lot of, when we talk about injustice and the pandemic and the poor and homelessness, a lot of our population are frontline. These are folks who are on the front lines, but they also have children, or there's a homelessness issue. But in order for me to work, it's work that is frontline work. And now healthcare is an issue. So childcare is an issue. All of those things. And I think, we count on folks to be there when we need to go to the store or when we need to go do what we need to do. But those folks are making a huge sacrifice with very little to support them while they do it. That's a part of, again, no solution, but a big one of my concerns to the question.
Yeah. And I'll just jump in to say, Eric, what you're touching on really does require policy change and really coordinated advocacy across all sectors. So there is a group that has come together, excuse me, called the Hoosier Housing Needs Coalition. And this group was really kind of birthed out of Even before this pandemic, Indiana has one of the highest eviction rates in the country. Indianapolis specifically has one of the highest eviction rates in the country. This was true before COVID. COVID is only going to exacerbate some of those realities. And so the Hoosier Housing Needs Coalition is putting together a policy agenda right now, really working with the state legislature and the governor's office on what kinds of policy changes are necessary to address some of those concerns. So I would get online and check them out, the Hoosier Housing Needs Coalition, and then also say, so sorry. Indiana Legal Services has an eviction avoidance project that they are working on to work with individuals who might be facing eviction, to also, one, understand their rights and potentially do some mediation and negotiation before that eviction happens. Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic is also doing some phenomenal work to make sure tenants know their rights and where they can go for help if they are facing eviction. So I just want to put those resources out to you, Eric. This is a huge issue. It's going to require policy change, and those are some good places to start to get connected. ILS, Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic, and the Hoosier Housing Needs Coalition.
Are there any other questions? Again, you can put those in the chat, or you can take yourself off mute. All right, and then, oh, was someone say, you may say something? No? All right, I was just going to reiterate too, if you are a provider or with an organization that serves youth and young adults, please feel free to reach out to me so we can include you in further conversations and discussions as we continue to push the work of our coordinated community plan forward and the goals that are outlined in that plan. So, and that touches on more than just housing. It touches on education, employment, well-being, connection to supportive individuals. So I can put my information in the chat as well. And so last call for any questions. All right, then I would just like to thank all of our amazing panelists today. Thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you for everyone who's out there every day advocating and pursuing an end to youth and young adult homelessness for our community. We hope that this discussion today will spark further discussions that lead to a greater action and solutions in our community. And then just a reminder, our concluding session for this series is on December 9th at 5 p.m. And that is a community partner awards will take place at that time. So we hope you all can join on that date as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Be safe.